Hello? I know, but I'm not very loud. Hello, everyone. We're all here, and the clock shows 7 o'clock. So I'm going to call this board meeting to session at 7 o'clock. I want to first note that we have two board members absent, Brad Alford and our president, Pete Russick. So I am vice president, and I'm running the meeting tonight. So we're very glad you're all here, and we hope you get a lot out of this meeting and enjoy what you do here. And with that said, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance to start our meeting, and South Bosky is going to lead that for us. Sherry, if you'd bring your students up, please.
Thank you. These are the students from Ms. Farmer's class.
If all would stand. Sherry, yeah, will you share with us? Sherry, you want to share the students with us who's here? Do you want to tell us who was here tonight, Sherry?
I would love to. They might be my favorites, just so you know. Ms. Farmer's class, we have Wheeler, and we have Hector, and we have Judah and Levi, and we have Finn, and we have Zabian, and Miss Rebecca. We have our lone girl, Rebecca. So thank you, friends. Come on.
Yes, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Next on the agenda is the reading of our district mission statement. Dr. Allen?
Yes, ma'am, and just as a brief reminder, the reason we do this is just to sort of remind us of what it is we're trying to focus on at these meetings. There's a lot of business that's covered, and it's not always 100% obvious what it is we're aiming in the direction of, and so sometimes it's good to just be reminded. So with that, Midway ISD will maximize individual potential within a learner-centered and supportive environment to prepare students to excel in a global society. And Jesse Garner and I were at a meeting today where there's a lot of discussion about the future and global society and what's coming next. And he and I were talking right before this meeting about some of the exciting things going on in the world. Mostly, it was a discussion about the impact of AI. And so when we're thinking about this mission statement, it's always good to be reminded that we're getting our kids ready to live in the society we live today, but prepared to work and contribute to the society of the future. And so just a good reminder.
Yes, always. And next is our recognitions of the month, and Jonathan Green is going to assist Dr. Allen in that.
Okay, there are several things that we take awareness of in October, and I told you last month that we would start calling these out just so you'd be aware of it. September 15th through October 15th, Hispanic Heritage Month. October is National Bullying Prevention Month and National Principals Month. And I would hope that everyone would take a moment to just recognize and be thankful for the hard work our principals do. In moments when I'm being horribly blunt, what I will say is that the job of the principal is to stand between students, staff, and parents on one side, and administrators, law, and policy on administrators, that's us. Folks at central office, law, and policy on the other, and try and figure out how to make all that work in such a way that we actually fulfill that mission statement we were talking about before. They quite literally go to work every day between a rock and a hard place. October 2nd was Custodian Appreciation Day. October 5 was World Teachers Day. October 6 was National Coaches Day. October 9 was Indigenous Peoples Day. October 9 through 13, School Lunch Week. Have a school lunch if you haven't done so in a while. October 11 was Texas Education HR Day. Dr. Knudsen and her staff do a great job of keeping us staffed. America's Safe Schools Week, 15 through 21, which we're going to talk more about in a minute. National Bosses Day was yesterday. Digital Citizenship Week is October 16 through 20. That's this week. October 23 through 31 is Red Ribbon Week. And so far in the month of October, we've made it through an eclipse, a full moon, October the 13th. If we get going, we will have made it. All right, so that's October. Let me talk to you a little bit about the Safety Stewardship Award. As we just recognized, this week is America's Safe Schools Week, and while the district is well equipped to respond to safety and security events, the response is just one part of the equation. So tonight we'd like to recognize the extensive efforts devoted to prevention. We don't really stop and think about all the things that could have happened but didn't, and that's part of what we're wanting to think about tonight. As part of preventative approach to safety, the Midway ISD Information and Technology Department plays a significant role in hardening our schools by enhanced security district-wide. In recognition of their ongoing commitment to careful and responsible management of safety and security, we are proud to honor the Information Technology Department with our first ever award for safety stewardship. Would everyone here tonight from our Information Tech team please come to the front? This team has led the charge in preventative safety measures through innovative cybersecurity, surveillance infrastructure, online safety, emergency notification systems, visitor screening, and data privacy. And on their most recent cybersecurity assessment, they received the highest cyber maturity score in the region. Wow. All of this points to just how much time and effort goes into the preventative measures we take place to keep our schools safe. This work the work this team does impacts every single building, student, and employee in the district, and they have done an outstanding job when it comes to ongoing proactive safety. Join me in thanking them for all of their hard work. All right, thank y'all very much. Yeah, well done, y'all.
Thank you.
Be a hard act to follow. Niche rankings are out for 2023, and next I'd like to recognize our campus and district rankings from niche.com. Niche assesses thousands of public schools in Texas each year to determine the highest achieving districts and top 10 performing elementary, middle, and high schools. In 2024, Midway ISD is ranked as the #1 school in McLennan County and the Waco area for the 7th year in a row, with an overall grade of an A+. Out of over 1,000 school districts ranked in Texas, Midway is the only McLennan County district to earn a spot in the top 75, ranking amongst the top 3% of districts in the state at number 23 overall. Wow. Additionally, Midway is ranked among the top 3% over 10,000 school districts in the United States. Midway also swept public school categories as home to the #1 best public elementary, middle, and high schools in Waco. South Bosque Elementary School is ranked #1. Best public elementary school in McLennan County, and their principal, Sherry Burns. River Valley Middle School is ranked #1 as the best public middle school in McLennan County. River Valley's principal is Paul Offel. Midway High School is ranked #1 in McLennan County for public high schools with an overall grade of A+. They're also ranked #1 best college prep high school in McLennan County. That principal is Allison Smith. And I'm going to ask Allison to hang tight for just a second, because in addition to all of that, U.S. News and World Report just gave us our ranking on Midway High School. U.S. News evaluated thousands of public high schools to identify the top performers for 23-24. Rankings, and Midway High School continues to be ranked #1 in Waco area amongst all the schools in this area, and they've also risen in the national rankings since last year. And once again, their principal is Allison Smith. While they're taking that picture, I'll say parenthetically that I know that we're very, very proud of the campuses that are represented this morning, but they would be the first to tell you that they benefit greatly from the collaboration they have with their colleagues, and that we know there's no one single campus that achieves in this district without all campuses working together. And so I'm really proud of the district and what that means for the work that we're trying to do as a collective.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. And I want to say to Jesse and the technology team, and I'm sure the rest of the board feels this way, we just want to thank you and also acknowledge your hard work and constant diligence to keep our technology systems as safe as possible. So we thank you for doing that. Also, I want to agree with what the niche ratings and the U.S. World and News Report said about our school districts. and, or schools, South Bosque, River Valley, and MHS. But that's all due to the hard work of our staff and our administration and how committed they are to giving the best education for our students. So thank you all again for working so hard to give us these great rankings.
I think we got a fair amount of hardworking students, too. And supportive families, so everybody can be proud.
So this is the conclusion of our awards recognitions. We will take a short break. For those of you who would like to leave the meeting, you may do so now, but we'd love for you to stay if you want to listen to the business end of things for the district. I think everybody, yeah, the technology team is leaving.
I actually had us ranked higher.
You did.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed.
They didn't get your memo.
Yeah.
Those statistics are really impressive,
They are.
Yeah, so,
extremely impressive.
so Dr. Allen, in light of the competitive public school world that's about to emerge, I mean, how can we use this, this type of recognition to position ourselves? I mean, usually we're kind of the quiet number one, but
Yes,
I
sir.
don't think we can stay quiet anymore.
Tonight is step one of the
Okay.
communications plan, where we're going to be very appreciative and in a public way for the hard work that our staff and students have done to put us in this position.
All right, great.
Okay, I have not been told of anyone wanting to address the board from the public, so we will continue on with the agenda. The next item is the information items. Does anyone want to discuss either one of these, or we will move on? No?
I'm excited to see we're adding yet another club.
Wrestling, man.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah. Okay.
that's serious business.
So the one thing I would add is that before this goes for approval, this will show up on next month's consent agenda. There is not a non-discrimination clause in those bylaws, and so I'm working with them to make sure they get that put in between now and then. Outside of that, it should look largely the same. I will tell you, the goal of the club is to build enough interest to join the UIL. The UIL actually does wrestling.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna ask.
I mean-
Yeah.
And so this
That'd
is,
be awesome.
we're seeding for that, and so we're trying to go in that direction.
That's awesome.
The more the clubs, the better.
Yes.
Okay, presentation, discussion items. Dr. Allen, you're up first. Update?
Ms. Vick, you might have heard that on the November 7 ballot, there will be a VATRE for Midway ISD. Early voting starts October 23rd. We did not, yes, sir. Yes, sir. In all seriousness, I'm not going to go through the whole presentation because you are very aware of this. We have updated some of the numbers, and I just wanted to make sure we touch on base on this fairly quickly, because this is the last time the board will meet before the actual election. So just wanted to talk about this a little bit. I'm going to see if this click will click from here. There we go. You know the challenge. We continue to struggle with the ability to recruit and retain teachers. This is not just in the state, but it's a national phenomenon. I heard some statistics today that said that this situation is going to only get worse until about 2030 at the soonest, just because of what we're seeing at the college levels. And so our need to stay competitive will continue to be an issue for the next several years. You also know, because you do this every day, that our tax rate, that our taxpayers pay, is a combination of the INS tax rate and the M&O tax rate. Last year was $1.12. What will be on the ballot is a tax rate of 0.93. That's an 18.5 cent reduction. So we're looking at a 3-penny increase to the M&O side, which would yield $3.75 million. It requires voter approval, and it is worth reminding folks that every dollar generated by those 3 golden pennies would stay in Midway ISD. We don't currently pay into Robin Hood, but later in the agenda, you're going to see where we have to propose attendance credits anyway. And that's because we're a hair's breadth away from having to pay into it. And I don't think it's if, I think it's when. And so it's nice for our community to know that these 3 pennies from this point moving forward would generate money that would stay in our district. I've been asked on several occasions, what will you do with that money? And without thinking, I've said teacher salaries. Like that's what every penny of it would go to, because that's what every dollar we need would be pointed in the direction of. The board on August 15th decreased the INX tax rate by 3 pennies. You know that because you voted on it. But it is worth reminding folks that that's already been done. That was an act of good faith on the part of this board, believing that A, it's the right thing to do, and B, it makes sense for our community to see the efforts of the board to manage the tax rate in a way that tries to make things as sensitive for our taxpayers as possible. You also know that the state has put in 18.5 cents of compression, and individuals will have an opportunity to vote for a increase to the homestead exemption on the ballot, which means they could exempt up to $100,000. Right now, the most you can get is $40,000. And then we've talked quite a bit to our population that is 65 years old and older about the fact that their taxes can go down and they can never go back up. And so that's reassuring to our folks on fixed incomes. So that's already been done. This is the part where we've updated information. So when we had this conversation back in August, I showed you data that said for 22-23 school year, if you look at our operational budget, we spent less money per student than any district in McLennan County. If the VATRE passes, we will spend, this is if it passes, y'all, this is with the additional $3.75 million. We will spend less money per student than any school district except for China Spring. Or to say that another way, we will spend less money per student than any school district in McLennan County going to school 5 days a week. And I'm not being funny, it matters.
Well, that's true.
That is true.
I mean, it is funny, but it matters. It's meaningful. They tried for a VATRE.
I was about to say, to be fair, they tried.
They tried.
tried.
No, yeah, they tried. It didn't, and so this is what they had to do. And so that's where that would put us relative to our neighbors in McLennan County. In 2022, no one had an M&O tax rate lower than Midway. If the VATRE passes, there will be a number that are lower than us. However, I would point your attention toward Robinson, Lorena, and Waco. Those are 3 of the districts that are currently outpaying us, and we'd be at 0.70, and they are still 6 pennies more per $100 valuation than Midway ISD. So relative to our competitors, it's still a significant value, especially when you consider what we are able to offer, just in terms of programs, facilities, educational quality. We do all of that. Last year, $1.12 overall. I mentioned that before. What I don't know that I've mentioned as specifically is there's 6 districts less expensive on the overall tax rate last year. If the VATRE passes, there'll be 5 districts less. So relative to our peers, if you take the INS and M&O together, we're actually in a even lower when you compare us to our neighbors in McLennan County. And so this is the 20-year tax rate. Again, you know that because some of you were here for a large portion of it. You know that this board has worked very, very hard to manage tax rates and to be as sensitive to taxpayers as is possible. You also know that part of the reason that we're struggling a little bit in the compensation market is because our neighbors are just flat out taxing us and have access to significant federal funds that we do not have access to. We commissioned a financial efficiency audit that's on our website. You heard about that last month. And this is still a little bit of an update. You have seen this language and we've showed it to you before. It's a little bit confusing. It's worth reminding individuals that if you want the district to get the $3.75 million, you're going to vote for this. If you do not want the district to glean that, then what you would do is vote against it. How can we be collecting less money in taxes but get more money? That 3 pennies just causes the state to give more money back to the district, money that they are currently sitting on to the tune of billions of dollars and doing nothing with. They've already taxed the citizens. This is just our way of trying to get the money back. Election day is November 7th. Early voting starts October 23rd. Those are all the locations you can vote, and recently added on our side of town is the ITC. I try to explain to people where that is, and they look at me like I'm crazy. When I say across Panther Way from Rosas, everybody knows where it is. So across the street from Rosas, ITC. You can vote there on November the 7th. It is not an early voting location, but you can go there on November 7th. So I know you know this, but I just wanted you to see some of that most up-to-date information. Even with the VATRE, when you take our overall tax rate and you compare it to our colleagues around us, we're actually going down relative to the market. So it's just worth knowing the facts on this so that you continue to stay up to date on where we are in this. And we'll see what happens on November 7th.
Okay, make the call. What's your gut feel?
I believe in our community and what they want for their children. I think it'll pass.
Okay.
I actually had a constituent raise a good question this morning because she was, it sounded like she was getting Proposition A and Proposition 4 a little bit muddled. They're both on the ballot. They both have implications for property tax and education funding, and so we went through that just a little bit. But just as an FYI, first of all, they're two very different
Yes.
measures, And one should say, will it read Midway ISD Proposition A? Or just Proposition A?
Have we seen a sample ballot? Yeah, that's a good
I
question.
haven't seen it yet.
This is more
I don't know the title of the ballot. In the ballot language, it says Midway.
But they are two different ones to keep in mind. And then I was looking more into it, and League of Women Voters has a really good informative video about Proposition 4, if you're interested in that as well.
Okay. And I'll try and get you a more complete answer on
Yeah.
what exactly that sample ballot will look like.
Right.
Okay.
But I just thought it was a good question.
ma'am.
I hadn't even considered it, and she had sort of merged them in her thinking, and so
Yeah.
we had some good discussion about it.
Yeah, well, I know we've got the constitutional amendments on the ballot.
Yes. Right.
Will those come before or after ours?
So our understanding is that Prop A will be the last thing that voters in Midway will see on the ballot.
Should be, because it's a local item on.
It is the last thing.
Okay.
So it'll be at the very end.
So don't get
if
to
they make it all
Proposition
the way.
4 and stop there, go all the
Keep
way
going,
to
finish.
Well, the language is much more positive than I expected on the ballot, so
Yes, ma'am.
I'm glad about that. Anybody have any other questions?
I was gonna say the new video with the explanations, like the hand-drawn video, said Miss Marlin did a great job on
Yeah.
that. I enjoyed it, thought it was very informative.
It's very good.
I always love a good stick figure cartoon drawing. It's very helpful.
With the assist from Jonathan. So,
And for everyone, thank you all for doing that. Thank you, Chris, for your report. Next is the 2023-24 District Improvement Plan and House Bill 3 update. Dr. Odijima.
Tomato?
Good evening. We bring to you tonight the annual district improvement plan preparation for your approval, and then also some updates about House Bill 3 that are embedded within that plan. You have the district improvement plan as well as campus improvement plans in your board packet, but we'll go through some of the highlights now. We'll talk about our process, our main goals, the House Bill 3 updates, and progress that we've made on those to date. So as far as the process, we began by starting with draft components that are based on our goals, and the Office of Teaching and Learning has a role, Human Resources and Professional Learning have a role, Student Support Services have a role, as well as Superintendent. And we draft the components of the goals, the strategies, and the objectives of that plan, and then we bring it to our MAS committee. So our Midway advisory and strategy team, which is made up of teachers from every campus in the district, parents, as well as some professionals. And they review it and advise us on what they think is spot on and what they think would be a better idea as far as the strategy goes. And then we bring that final plan to you tonight. We do want to remind you that the plan is a living document, so this won't be the last time that we update that plan along the way. We'll continue to seek the input from assistant superintendents, directors, coordinators, campus leadership to make sure that we are addressing the needs of students with our goals and strategies. And then we'll continue to look at student achievement as we go, demographic changes, any other qualitative information we have, human resource needs, and other data that come from state and federal requirements. So we'll continue to update. The goals that you have here are the same that they've been for a number of years that were identified years earlier by the board. So goal 1 identifies our academic group. So we want to meet the academic needs of our diverse population, and we have objectives and strategies that identify how we are to do that. We also want to provide influential role models through our recruiting, retention, and support of high-quality staff. That's where our HR system comes in and our campus leadership. Goal 3 identifies that we want to partner with our community to provide the safe and secure, supportive environment that's going to meet the physical, social, and spiritual needs of our student population. And then our 4th goal is centered around the idea of representing our stakeholders and providing input and feedback to those governing authorities and community infrastructures that are going to help us make sure that we have maximum effectiveness in our public education system for our students. So you have the objectives and strategies there in the plan and how we plan to go about creating that environment in those goals, and then also how we're going to update and constantly look for feedback on those goals throughout the year. As far as House Bill 3, just as a reminder, House Bill 3 was an amendment to Texas Education Code that came about in 2019, and it identified targets that it wanted us to track and respond to for early childhood literacy, as well as early childhood math scores, and then also college and career and military readiness. So when House Bill 3 came about, the board had to identify a plan, which you all did, and it was required that you would assign a district-level administrator to monitor that plan, to implement that plan, and then also to bring an annual review in a public meeting like this board meeting to you each year to identify where we've made some progress and where we are still working on those particular goals that we set aside. So the goals within our district improvement plan come under Goal 1 and the first performance objectives. You'll see that many of these align with our district report card, which we do not currently have. But we are using our local numbers to identify these areas and to measure what we can at this time. Our first objective talks about maintaining an A in Domain 3. Domain 3 is the closing the gaps domain in accountability. It's where we have those federal targets that we're trying to hit. So we want at least 75% of Midway campuses to achieve those targets. We don't yet have that data, but we are striving for that. As far as early childhood literacy that's identified in House Bill 3, this last year we wanted to move from 64% to 69% achievement. You'll see here, based on the student assessments that we have in hand, this doesn't come from the report card itself, it comes from us aggregating the student data that comes from each of those tests. We were at 65% at that meets standard last year, and we moved to 67%. We didn't quite hit our goal of 69%, but we are making positive growth there. The third goal here identifies the early childhood math goal, where we want third grade students to have a meets grade level or above, move from 59% of those students in that area to 73, so that was quite a large jump. In this area, we moved from 59% the previous year to 64%, so that's a good gain. We didn't quite meet that target, but we'll continue to plan for that. I do want to remind you that the test that we measured, remember, was a very different test as well. So we're trying to hit targets that were identified 5 years ago, and they probably didn't plan to change the test in the middle of these targets, but we have. So that's where we are, making positive growth, but not quite to those targets yet. Number 4 on this objective list identifies the college and career military readiness goal. In 2018, that was at 72%. We wanted to achieve at 90% by the time the 5-year goal was over. We hit 90% the very next year. So we were looking to maintain that 90% and then continue to grow 1% annually. So we've been there for a while, or near that for a while. We had a bit of a dip last year because we had a clerical error that caused some of our CCMR courses not to register as they should have, but that has been corrected. We won't know specifically where CCMR comes out until we get the accountability final record, the A-through-F report card from the state, and that is a debatable issue right now for CCMR. But as it stands, it looks very good for us to be above that 90% threshold. So we'll let you know that as soon as we find out. Our final goal here deals with Domain 2, which is the school progress domain. This is measured growth of individual students. So we'll continue to look for progress of individual students. We don't have those numbers yet to know if we have an A in that rating until we get that when we have the district report cards back. So as far as progress, we are going to continue to look for that 75% of campuses maintaining an A in Domain 3. For the early childhood literacy goal, we want to move from 67% to 70% by the end of the school year. For math, we want to move from 64 to 75, so another large jump in math that we'll be pushing for. With CCMR, again, we want to increase at least to 90%, if not better, in that area. And then finally, in Domain 2, Part B, we want a rating of A. So those are what we're looking for. Currently, we don't have definitive state accountability as far as an A through F rating. We will update you when we receive that information. It was supposed to be in early November. Now we're hearing later November before December. So we'll see if that tracks. In place of that state data, we're not just waiting. We are using local tools that we have to gather information and track progress so that we can already begin to work with those identified populations of students that need some additional intervention. We'll have beginning of year data that we can compare to middle of year data by January, so we can bring that at that time to let you know how things are going. And then hopefully we'll see those district and campus accountability A through F ratings come out in November. Any questions on that?
So there's several districts that are suing the state,
Yes.
even some local ones. Are there issues, anything that are concerning to us? I mean, what is the meat of their complaint?
They changed the criteria for CCMR to a much higher standard. And the schools who had received an A rating in CCMR, or 90% or better in CCMR, were not going to receive that same scale score anymore. So they changed that number. The big concern is they changed the number on a measure that like happens with your previous year graduates. So like CCMR is delayed a year already.
Right.
So if you change the rules in the middle of this school year, I can't do anything about my past students. So it was going to negatively impact a lot of schools because of those ratings, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it.
So it's gonna retro change some of
Right.
their
Yes.
previous
Right.
ratings, and we're not in that,
We're
that's
not
not
in
a
that.
factor for
We're
us.
set
solid.
very well with the current standard.
Okay,
I think it would only, any changes that they make should not impact us negatively, and it may help us. But the governor has said he's not, or the commissioner of education has said he's not touching CCMR. He's looking at other things. We'll see.
okay.
Do we know why the state is so slow in getting us our results? What's the delay?
I'm gonna sit back and just listen, Becky.
Are you? Okay, jump in anytime. So we changed an assessment. Every other time they've changed an assessment with this much change, they've renamed the test and given schools a grace period to understand how that test is going to impact student achievement, their overall accountability, all of those things. And we've had like a year to like learn. They didn't change the name of the test, so they didn't change any of those protocol and accountability pieces. And when they receive the information back from this totally different test, it isn't as expected. So they've made some adjustments along the way. Every time it's been the day that they were going to release a particular criteria, they held back on it because they felt like they needed a little more work on the numbers. So in state accountability, you receive a number for your student achievement that's actually a raw score that makes sense. It's calculation of the number of students that achieved growth or the percentage score that they got on that test. In our accountability system, that number, that raw number, is not what we use for accountability. That number correlates to a scale score, which comes from this make-believe scale score land, and that gets manipulated quite often so that the standards reflect a normal bell curve or the statistical measures that they're looking to use. I don't think they found the sweet spot yet where things come out like they expected that they would be measured. So
They
we're
don't
delayed.
like the way it will make us look.
I think also probably 3/4 of the districts in the state being in a lawsuit about the change in CCMR that would retroactively change. They can't retroactively change what the kids have graduated. They can't do anything about their CCMR score. So I think those have thrown some wrenches in the works that schools are not prepared to take. They're standing up to say, this is not what we expected, and it's not okay to change that, and then publish that this is our rating to the public when we feel like we've done well. There are many schools that had lots of growth this last school year, even with the test change, but it is going to negatively impact their A through F rating. So they have something to say about that. We are very fortunate that we're in a pretty good spot.
I hope that what you're gleaning from all this
is just how arbitrary.
Well, that's why so many parents don't like all state testing.
They look at the numbers and they play with them till they get them to do what they want them to do.
Yeah.
And relative to as compared to saying, here's pass fail and go forth and do, that's not the system we live with. And part of the reason I told you I was gonna be quiet. You knew it wasn't gonna happen. Part of the reason school
That's not
districts
in my
are
time.
suing, it's everything Dr. Odojima said, plus, like this is the analogy I've tried to use to describe it to people. Imagine you went to your boss and your boss said, I will evaluate you on your performance as an employee, and then based on that, I'll tell you how you've done. As an employee, you would say, sure, tell me what it is I need to do, and I'll do that well. And your boss says, no. I'll tell you after the evaluation's gone. I'll tell you what it was you were supposed to be good at after the evaluation's gone. There's not an employee in the world who would think that's fair. And that's the situation we're in. We've been teaching for a year and we took a test and they didn't tell us what the cut scores were. They didn't tell us what was going on. They told us nothing. They said, we'll get the numbers. We'll let you know later. Okay. And then in addition to that, to Dr. Odojima's point, they monkey with CCMR, which is about kids who've already graduated. And I think the part that for some of our neighboring districts is the most offensive is they've got numbers that show that they had student growth like they haven't had before. And they're going from A's to F's. And it just seems capricious at best.
And we wonder why our funding is in the state it's in.
Well, I wonder why it is that we have certain local officials who want to say that vouchers are a good idea because of third grade achievement. And I'm curious which third grade achievement he's talking about. Teams, tabs, star, tax? I mean, every time we get good at something, they move the goalpost. So it's fascinating. Time will tell.
It's also interesting that our ratings are not yet released, but there's also a special session happening now at the state level.
Hey, so can I
Could be connected.
Can I throw something in that's not related at all to STAR on this? Because I actually, in the last 2 days, read a lot more of these district improvement plans than I normally do. I normally kind of look at the district and kind of skim through, but I looked a little more in depth because my takeaway here is this is the thing that we do, is we educate students, right? This is like the reason we're here. And to me, this is the strategic plan. This is the only strategic plan we really have, which says, how are we going to do this and how are we going to do it better, regardless of what the state says about scores and stuff.
Right.
So it's been really interesting to see at the district level, but at the campus level, sort of what that looks like, right? And so obviously, this is not the meeting to get into a 300-foot level conversation. It's a 30,000-foot level conversation. I get that. But the big picture questions I have is, so what, if we think of this as a strategic plan, talk about how this sort of drives a straight line through budgeting, hiring, programs, curriculum, everything else, right? Because it's not just about the test scores, right? But ideally, if we say these are the goals, these things are important, then the budget and the hiring and the program should match that. So talk about that if you can.
Sure.
Just briefly if you want.
Yeah, the title schools for certain, but then also the other schools actually look at the additional funding that they have for these at-risk populations and identify how we're going to address that. We have local, we're looking for the best teachers, always. So that funding piece, the VATRE piece, is all in support of that goal. And then the professional learning, and then also the measuring of student success is important to us, which is also how some of that budgeting and funding go along with this. Progress monitoring tools aren't inexpensive. We invest lots in those, and it's our obligation to train staff so that they know what they have in that data and that they know how to improve student performance with that data. So much of what you'll see in these improvement plans is how often they're going to track student progress, and then how they're going to create interventions for students who are in these at-risk populations that need more time with the teacher or an additional curriculum or additional program, or how they're going to use additional staff or the staff that they have in order to support those small groups of students. So you should see that embedded all throughout these plans, is how we address the student needs with staffing, how we address it with programs and monitoring, and then how we address with intervention as far as our at-risk student populations and their needs.
Yeah, and that's good, that's great. And I love the fact that it's a living document, sort of you talked about, so it will continue to inform decisions we make in the future, and it will inform, you know, the questions we ask and the things we measure. So the only somewhat in the weeds question I'll ask, and I'll let it go, is the rest is, what is the Midway mindset? Because I noticed a lot of the campus plans talked about that, and it looks like it's some district-wide strategies and things.
Right.
But give me an example as a person that doesn't have an education degree
Sure,
of what does that
absolutely.
mean?
Several years ago, as a collective leadership team with the exec team, we identified research-based best practice pedagogy in the classroom that would give you the most bang for your buck. So we looked at statistical significance of strategies and whether or not they worked effectively. Things like formative assessment, collaborative learning, setting an objective or a goal before the lesson and measuring whether or not the student had hit that target. Other types of interactions with other students and those pairings, attention-getting tools. So we basically created the Midway mindset. So in a Midway classroom, like this is the best education and the best pedagogy we can offer students. And if every teacher has that skill set to carry out those pedagogical strategies, then that's a great teacher. So we use research, district experts, and put together this list that we then train through professional learning opportunities so that teachers were familiar with those pedagogical approaches. So there's a researcher that talks about how much gain you get from these different strategies. So we made sure that we looked at those high yield strategies that would help our teachers bring the best product and the best focus and the best engagement to our students. And then we train that. So that's what Midway Mindset is. It's our local brand of best practice strategies.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I think we should spend more, you know, we should spend more time looking at this stuff and figuring out how does this, because this comes back to, you know, maximize individual potential, right? Right there from our mission statement. So I love it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
And
for sure.
I'll yield back.
Well, you never took anything, so
Well,
sorry,
you know.
there's nothing to yield. I do, so I love that, you know, statistical, that Midway mindset. So give me your gut feel from how embedded is that, you know, from 0 to 100%? I mean, do we feel like we've got that mindset in, you know, at 50%, 75%? I mean, we're not going to get it 100%. So
Right.
Even by level, right? By elementary versus.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
whatever,
want to
yeah.
break it down that far, but I just curious.
As far as exposure goes, I can say exposure to the mindset is 100%. Because we train every new teacher in the district with these tools. When we have their new teacher
Right.
back to school days, we talk about it, we embed it. Our learning coaches use these as strategies on our campuses. Is there room for improvement? Always. When you're hiring 135 new people to the district,
Yeah.
there's lots of things you need to help them understand and operate within so that they can be in Midway. So it's one of those things that we're layering in as a part of Midway, but it's always something that we'll continue to work with. It's something we'll continue to revise and make sure that it aligns with the shift in, you know, needs of the district. Or our training may be modified because we have new teachers that have more skills or less skills in a particular area. So when you're training more new or less experienced personnel, it's something that we have to continue to train on in order for that to
Like
take
10,000
hold.
hours, you got to get your 10,000 hours to reach some
Right.
level of expertise.
Right.
So what's the number? So are we like 60% execute on the
I think
execution side?
100% know what it is. I think 50% implemented on a daily basis.
Okay, good. Just kind of gives me a feel for
Yeah.
where we are. So
Yeah.
it's good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Becky, can you remind us who sits in on the district improvement plan and put it together?
As far as the departments,
Departments and any community members and the mass committee?
sure, the
like
mass
that.
committee has community members involved in that. And then teacher representatives from every campus. There's 2 teachers from every campus that stay on for 2 years and then rotate off. So we have new teachers coming in every year. And then we have like my teaching and learning team has a part of that in the MAS committee, as well as other campus leadership and district leadership.
Do we have a board member on the
I
MAS?
was gonna say, we often have a board member
Yeah, I
on
wasn't
the
sure
MAS
who it
committee.
was.
I was on it for many years.
I've been on it.
Pam's been on it, so that's somewhere if you were interested, call in. I don't know who's
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
it now,
I
but
don't-
that's where
And I
you
sent,
could get
early on,
involved.
before we
I was helping
had our
Jesse
first.
this year with technology, but I don't know.
Yeah,
who-
before we had our first mass meeting this year, I sent an email invite for names of community members, but you're absolutely welcome to come to that as well.
So that's,
Yeah.
it's an interesting and fascinating process to be involved in. I did it for many years, and you really get to understand how the district works on
Yeah.
all levels and what it takes to make it work. So it's pretty fascinating.
Cool,
So if
certainly.
that's something you want to do.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Very good. All
We
right.
have a meeting on November 1st.
Anybody have any other questions or comments on that subject? All right, Becky, stay where you are.
Okay.
And we're
Hey,
going to do.
I'll
you're gonna-
say this,
Oh.
I'm always impressed by how prepared you are for us to throw random things at you, so well done.
Thank you. Knock on wood, because I
We
got
try
another
to, we try to make it
Oh,
hard.
night's not over, come on.
And now,
part two.
She's not done yet for the evening, Colin. Set her up. Okay.
We'll get her this time.
I know.
That's it. Okay,
That's right.
hopefully not.
So
Hopefully
next-
this is better news than we were hoping for.
That's right.
Okay.
So teacher incentive allotment program update.
Yes. So we've come to you a couple of times with teacher incentive allotment, so we want to catch you up on where we are in this phase. As a reminder, teacher incentive allotment also came out with House Bill 3. We just have a theme of House Bill 3 items tonight. And it was an effort for educators to earn higher salaries and then attract and keep those educators in our public school systems, as well as it also incentivizes teachers to be in campuses with the highest needs, so rural communities and also schools that have a higher, low socioeconomic population. So there were two paths for this teacher incentive allotment funding. One was national board certification, and the other was local designation. Schools didn't have to do any of it, or they could do one of them. We decided to do both. And so we started with national board back as soon as we introduced this in like 2021. So we now are on our cohort 4. So it's our 4th group of teachers starting this year to work through the national board certification program. Schools don't have to offer this. A teacher can sign up and do national board on their own, but it's a lengthy and difficult process. And so we have teachers in our district that were national board certified teachers. Our actual facilitators, Kathleen Minshew and Dr. Lori Sapp, were national board teachers and had been through the process. So they created this cohort system early on and are continuing to facilitate that. We've had teachers go through this system. The 4 teachers that you see listed here are teachers that are being paid for national board certification this very year. We've had some that are national board teachers, but they move into other roles that are not 087 coded positions anymore. So they're an interventionist or a counselor or a librarian. This money has to go directly to teachers. So they're still national board certified, but they don't get the teacher incentive allotment money if they're not in a classroom. So this is to incentivize teachers to stay in the classroom. So I am happy to report, both Dr. Sapp and Ms. Minshew said that cohort 3 has 15 submissions that are waiting for approval. So we're going to gain more on these numbers. And cohort 4's got about the same that are beginning the process. So it's a lengthy process, and they submit things in phases. And they've done a lot of work, and we hope to have a report of lots of teachers being accepted to that program here soon, because they get funded in the same year that they're identified. So that's exciting news.
And where those funds come from?
Federal
The
government?
state funds.
Okay.
Yeah, the same
What-
place as the other teacher incentive allotment for local designation.
How many
So-
total teachers do we have?
How many what?
Total teachers do we have? Versus how many?
560, is that right? Okay,
600? And what percentage are are currently or in the process of being certified?
what'd I say?
15 and 15.
30 plus the 5, so 35 out of that 600.
6%.
Is that
Who's gonna do the math?
normal? I mean, I don't know where we stand versus our peers. Is that good,
Versus our
bad?
peers, we're exponentially better. They don't,
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we're looking at
good.
potentially 6.
yeah.
That should be in a national report. We need to put that
Oh,
out
I'm
there.
happier now. That's great.
Didn't stump her with that one.
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
great.
So here's the next component. We also started back in September of 2021 a process to create a local designation system. The state said that if districts wanted to create this local designation system, there were these parameters and things that they had to create a committee and look at and bring to the board and have that kind of approval. And so there were some steps we had to go through. So we began that process then. At a minimum, our system had to include teacher performance and student performance, and then it could include these other factors if you wanted to add those in, but there were some minimum standards, and we had to decide locally what we were going to do with that. So we began this process with the committee back in September of 2021, and we started looking at which teacher eligibility groups we would want to include, how we would want to do that, how we would choose those student growth measures for each of the eligibility groups, how we would look at calibrating and validating T-tests, which is our teacher appraisal system. We looked at how we would weight the required standards, how we would fund these teachers, and then how we would place those teachers within the district should we choose to do that. So the committee began working on that, and we met every other month until we had a plan in place, and then we presented that to you all and then also to teachers and administrators in our district.
What would be, when you said teacher eligibility groups, can you give me an example?
I can, and we're going to have some in the slides here in just a minute.
Oh, I'm
So I
sorry.
think that will be easier when you see it.
Gotcha, thank you.
So the committee decided that we would only go with those two designation criteria. So we would look at teacher performance and student growth. And they wanted to weight the teacher performance at 40% of that measure and then student growth at 60. They wanted the student growth to do the talking. So if my students got better, then they wanted that weighted more heavily than just the evaluator's appraisal of the teacher. So we did that. We decided to go with 2 phases of teacher groups. So these are our eligibility groups. Phase 1, we began with the core teachers who already routinely implemented some kind of pre and post test. So they were going to do it anyway. It was our regular practice. We already had some things in place. It wasn't going to be a heavy lift for us to implement this. Phase 2 is the other groups who may have needed to create or find or purchase pre and post tests, or they could go with this portfolio system, or they could find other third-party assessments that might help us measure. But we knew we could move forward with phase 1. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. In phase 1, so Ms. Watts, here's the list. In phase 1, we have every pre-K teacher. We also have K through 2nd grade teachers in a group together. They have the same growth measure. 3rd through 5th grade math and science teachers use Tango Line, our math screener. 3rd through 5th grade reading uses the NWEA math reading screener. And then K through 12 had the opportunity to use FitnessGram, which is also a state third-party test that they use routinely. We had a group of secondary teachers as well. We looked at 6th through 8th grade ELAR teachers using their previous year star to the current year star, and we measured, the district set the growth on that. We did the same for math. We also made that available for 9th and 10th grade ELAR teachers, and then also Algebra 1 teachers. So each of these groups has a different, each of the groups is a different eligibility group, and they have their own unique measure.
And just to
A pre and
clarify,
post test.
that's a longitudinal measure for the student, right? So you would look at the
Right.
student's previous year star versus the student's current,
Yes,
okay.
you're tracking growth on an individual student, and then the percent of those students that meet or exceed growth is the teacher's.
For that teacher,
That's the
right,
capture
gotcha.
number. Great questions. So our data capture year for phase 1 was last school year. So every teacher in every one of these groups had to have an appraisal, which has not always been our practice. So our principals worked very hard to make sure all of these teachers in these eligibility groups had a full evaluation and went through that process. And then we had to make sure that their students were participating in these pre and post tests. As far as our phase 2 group, they piloted some pre and post tests that they created locally and tested those out. And then their data capture year started this year. So as far as teacher compensation goes, what we're looking at moving forward, by law, 90% of the funds had to go at least to compensation on the campus where the teacher was that generated the money. So it had to go to that campus, but they didn't say it had to go directly to the teacher. Our committee decided that 85% of those funds should go directly to the designated teacher, but they wanted to set aside 5% for instructional support staff who may help them with their intervention groups or at other like push-in opportunities in the classroom where they're working with the students there in their room, but they're not necessarily eligible for teacher incentive allotment. They wanted to make sure that those people were taken care of as well. 10% of the funds go toward support of the system, because we have to continue to pay for screeners and then facilitate just management of all these
Pre
numbers.
and post tests.
Right. So that's the breakdown. So 85% of these funds would go directly to the teacher, support staff, and then some administrative costs. Here's the breakdown. So this was released in April of 2023. You saw a chart similar to this probably 2 years ago when it came out, but these are more current numbers. So as far as our campuses go, the higher your low SES population, the higher the payout for teachers on that campus. So you'll see a few changes in the payout here. This amount is the 85%. So this is what would go to a teacher that was designated on that campus in that particular area. So there's 3 levels: recognized, exemplary, and masters. They have 3 different thresholds. And so the highest threshold was intended to only be 5% of the teachers in the state of Texas. So a minimal amount would ever achieve, based on the statistic that they set up and the thresholds that the state sets, only 5% of the teachers in the state would ever actually qualify for that top amount. We are excited to say we have some of those. So based on the data that we collected, I'm about to submit a report to Texas Tech, who's doing all the data calculations for TIA. And I've sent an email to the teachers who are going to be designated to have them verify their information and make sure it looks correct to them. But based on my calculations within this system, this is the number of teachers we think it's going to impact in our schools this year.
That's awesome.
So what that means is, in our phase 1, we ended up with 267 eligible teachers. That's people who are in these categories. Of those 267, 39 earned recognized designation, 34 earned exemplary, and 15 earned master teacher designations. That's huge.
That's a third. That's a third.
Yeah, I'm hitting the numbers really close to what they say, 33%, got it. So that means we have a total generated funding amount of $572,000 based on those numbers. 85%, that means 486 plus thousand is going directly into teachers' pockets.
Wow.
The payout would begin this May.
Wow.
So this is last year's data. I have to submit it. If it's verified and our data calculations and our application is accepted and verified as the way it needs to be, then we're in the system. So we've got kind of a major hurdles to submit this data, but this is where we look like we're headed with that data.
And then they get the bonus amount every year for
Yes.
5 years?
They're designated for 5 years, and then they would have to redesignate. We could submit them again. The nice thing is, this doesn't stop.
So
So
we
I'm
can
already collecting
Continue for the next year.
23,
Yeah.
24 data,
Right.
which we'll put together, and any teachers that gain designation based on that data will get submitted next October as well. Plus, I've got those phase 2 teachers starting this year, which may also add to the numbers as we move forward. So major hurdle to try to get this application finished and accepted so that we have a designated system or a valid system. So we're still waiting on that. They have to run these validity checks. So I've done as many validity checks as I am statistically qualified to do. So we ran some things. The big one is many of these are weighted more heavily than others. The most heavily weighted one is that first one at the top. The correlation, there has to be a Pearson correlation coefficient of 0.24 in order for you to have a valid system. We got 0.328 on our system, so we know we've met that threshold. We get 3 points in that category times 12. So, I mean, it's heavily weighted. We're headed in the right direction with what we've got. They're going to look at correlations between our data and the state standards, both in student growth, but also in teacher performance. They're going to look at the comparisons and the validity between campuses of those designated teachers to make sure we're not designating too many on one campus that have lower scores and not the other. So they'll do that for our designated teachers across campuses, and then also our student scores across campuses. They're also going to look across assignments. So with the group of K2 teachers, does that look similar on all the campuses and within that assignment versus what we have in other assignments? And then they'll continue to compare us to the state performance standards. So the state said, in order for student growth to be achieved at a recognized level, at least 50% of your students had to meet or exceed growth. For an exemplary teacher, at least 60%. And for a master teacher, at least 70% of your students would meet or exceed growth. And they had the same kind of numbers for your T-test appraisal. So when we looked at our system and we looked at the teachers that would be designated, we looked at those thresholds to make sure we were not exceeding something that would cause our application to get kicked back and then no one get funded. So it's a process, but I feel like we have a strong submission, so we're waiting on that. Your role tonight is before October 26th, I'll submit this file. Based on the number of teachers, so that number of 80-something teachers that we believe will be designated, we have to pay $500 per designated teacher to TIA for them to run the validation system. That money is then given back to us in the settle-up when they pay for our teacher designations through the state. So they pay that back in September of 2024. They reimburse us through the FSP, so that settle-up money. We would receive the teacher designation money as well as this $500 per teacher back. But you do have to front it. So tonight, there is a budget amendment to ask for that $40-ish thousand.
Please don't lose that receipt.
Yeah.
For sure.
Keep all the
But it
back
also means that come May, if this system is valid, and we'll find that out in February, and we'll find out the final designations in April, if this system is valid, the district will be coming again to talk about using fund balance to pay those $468,000 in teacher stipends that will then be returned to us in September. So we'll talk about that after we get through the validation steps. But it could be great news for some of our teachers.
So you mentioned if the system is valid, does that mean if the state says, hey, yeah, this all looks good,
State has to
and we keep this the same year to year to year, that it's easier? I mean, is the $500 a yearly thing, or once they validate the
Yes,
system? are we
every
good, or
time
how's that?
you submit a new teacher for designation or a teacher for a higher designation, we can expect to pay that fee.
That's fine,
Which would
okay.
be settled up. That's the other nice thing about this,
And
is
it's
if a
certainly
teacher
worth it.
ended up on a recognized level, but they feel like it was just an off year, like, we'll continue to collect their data, and if they come in at a higher level, we submit them at a higher level.
But once this year they recognize and verify our system,
Yes.
they don't have to do that every year. It's just the teachers that we
Right.
submit every
Right.
year.
Once we have a valid system,
We don't
then
have to
we
go
have the
through that,
opportunity
yeah.
to move forward without these constant checks.
Right.
Will we know that our system is valid before we pay the 500 per teacher?
No, we'll find out in February, and we have to give them the 500 in November.
But our confidence level is high?
Yes.
What's your gut? Sorry, that's Rick's question.
I've aligned the system with every standard I've seen published and every webinar I've been on.
Well, you said it had to be
close.
at 0.24 correlation coefficient. We're at 0.32.
That's
That's-
So our
significantly.
That's
high.
some good math.
We're over on
yeah.
that.
Well, the state's squirrely, but I'm just telling you, our confidence is high.
There are some, there will be some questions that I have to explain in the application of teachers that were identified in our original data file as teachers that could be eligible, who are not in our 267 eligible teacher category. But those teachers that are not in the list either left before the end of the school year, so we don't have data to submit. They may have slipped through the cracks a bit and did not collect the correct student data that we need for validation. Many of them are in teaching assignments where that is not their primary role. So PE, for example, there are many people who have at least a section of PE in their schedule, but that is not their primary teaching area. So it's not where they would be observed, and it's not where they would collect data, because they would do that, if they're a teacher coach, they would be observed in their English content area, and that's what we would submit for their designation, not their being a sub-varsity football assistant. So I think we have good reasons for the data that we have right now, so
So
we'll see. It will still be, hold our breath and cross our fingers and think
Wear
good
your
thoughts for
lucky shirt.
February. Yes.
Can teachers double dip between the two, between the national board certification and this? Can they collect?
They cannot collect both, but National Board only pays out the recognized level, which is the lowest level on the three tiers. So if a national board teacher were to have exemplary or master's numbers, we would designate them through the local designation system and let them have the higher amount. The other thing that national board does for teachers, though, is that locally, we pay a $2,000 stipend for every national board teacher. So they would still get that local stipend in addition to their local designation money.
Okay. Is it portable? So a teacher leaves, do they still get that 5-year
Yes.
increase wherever they end up going?
Yeah, so the
to
cool
work?
thing is, this designation goes on their SBEC certification account. So just like it says, I'm a like mine says, K-12 music, lifetime, so I don't ever have to retake a test. It's because I'm very old.
That's
Yeah,
important,
They used to do
lifetime.
that. Now you have to get 5 years and then you're new. But just like their teaching certifications, this designation is going to go on that state record. So wherever they go outside of Midway, they'll continue to generate funds at those campuses. But you can't be designated ever unless your district has a system. So we've had people, one of the reasons we moved forward with this in the beginning is that we had people moving into our district that were designated in other schools, and they were getting the stipend. The state was giving us the money for them. But our own teachers who had been here, loyal Midway teachers for years, were never going to have the opportunity to be designated if we didn't create a local designation system if they stayed in Midway. We want them to stay in Midway. We want them to be
Yeah.
able to achieve this in Midway. We want to keep them after they're designated, but we want to at least offer this opportunity for teachers.
So, which brings up my next question. Seems it's going to take a lot of resources to kind of get this thing kicked off. What do our other local districts look like? How many have implemented something?
Waco has one,
Okay,
and Robinson was working on it,
and that's it.
as far as I know.
Okay. So it would be, you know,
It's a
gives
benefit to
Tracy
come
another
here.
marketing
Some of our
opportunity.
other,
Absolutely.
where do
Yeah.
we get a teacher from? Harmony had one? Harmony has a system. We've gotten some teachers from there
Okay.
that were designated.
Two things I want to say. I may be a little biased on this, but as long as this presentation has been, you're not even seeing the tip of the iceberg on the amount of work that's been done under the surface.
Oh, we can tell.
Yeah.
If you saw the spreadsheets living underneath all this stuff,
I believe it.
and the amount of manual data entry that Becky had to do. Like a lot of the stuff didn't import and it wasn't pretty. She was taking 265 teachers worth of stuff and sitting in front of a spreadsheet and hand keying stuff in, and then all the statistical analysis on the back end. I cannot imagine that there is a full recognition of the amount of work that she personally, I don't mean the system, that she has had to do to put our teachers in position to glean $486,000 potentially if our system's approved. And you can ask anybody on the exec team, like we all kind of know, no one's going to try and say that they were part of that game. She locked herself in a hole, put on a green visor, and started crunching numbers. So she deserves extraordinary recognition for her work on this. The second piece I would add is I'm not going to be surprised if after we do the data validation piece, if the state doesn't reach out to Midway and say, we want you to duplicate what you've done for other districts in the state.
Can we charge them?
I was gonna
Yeah,
say, do we get
6
paid for
figures,
that?
eight figures, we'll do it.
I think we need to get a
They
fee.
can't have Becky, they can't
All in
have
favor,
Becky.
I was
say
gonna
aye.
say, I'm more worried about Becky being the deputy commissioner of TIA.
They can't
But y'all have been doing this for a little while, and I kind of know when you see the thing that becomes the template for the state. And the way that we're doing things here, it's not completely flawless. We have to work out some differences between NWA and Tango and this, that, and the other. But the way she's conceptualized all this, even including ways for PE teachers to get this stuff done, and I'm telling you, if you want to nerd out on some statistical analysis, sit down with Dr. O one day and just say, explain to me exactly how it is a teacher can get TIA on Fitness Scramble. Watch her. Just bring
Can
a
we
cup
get
of coffee,
Becky a stipend?
but watch. And so it is extremely robust. It is extremely well thought out.
Great.
And And I say all that to sort of get to the third point I'm gonna make. There's 267 teachers who are eligible, and how many did you say are gonna get the money? 80-ish?
88, looks like.
Okay. That means there are gonna be some who didn't. And that's not gonna land perfectly well for some people either. Okay? And so I want you to believe in just how the strength of the system, because it is gonna create a little bit of tension for folks who thought they were deserving. What I'm telling you is this is not a thinking you're deserving process. This is the numbers show it or they don't process. It's exceptionally numbers driven. And so we're excited about the fact that if teachers felt like they should be in it and did it, come on, we'll get you in next year's round, and we want people to get this money, and we're committed to crunching. This is the Royal Week. Becky is committed to crunching as many numbers as we have to crunch to get as many teachers in it as we can. But it is exceptionally well thought out and very, very robust, the work that's been done to make the system as strong as it is. I would stand this up against anybody in the state. I couldn't be prouder of the work that's been done on this initiative.
Great.
Thank you.
Hey, so, okay, here's the wrench I'm gonna throw. Fantastic, love what we're doing with TIA, love it. And maybe this is more of a question for Ashley too, as well, but what does it look like to bend the curve a little more, right? Rather than, it's great that we're layering TIA on top of really a primarily seniority-driven teacher salary system. What does it look like to bend that curve a little more before we get to kind of next year's teacher pay situation to say, hey, there's TIA, but some of these measures, we think locally we should distribute some dollars a little differently as well to reward what we see as good behavior, right? Based on the numbers. What does it look like? Is that too many cans of worms to open, or is this a conversation that you guys think you could have in the next 6-12 months?
The short answer is yes.
Yes to which one?
Too many cans of worms.
Okay.
TIA is the state's incentivizing districts to try and bend that curve. You and I were in the same commission.
That's what I'm asking about. That's what Mike Morath talked about.
And so what he was saying is, he talked about there's a way that districts can get money to try and do this. This is what he was talking about, was this program.
Okay.
And so we are doing exactly what he was describing, and we're leveraging state funds to do it. If between our VATRE and somebody at the state of Texas choosing to take pub ed seriously, we can get our teachers up to where we're at an acceptable baseline for our teaching staff, then we can begin to think about bending resources out of our local budget. But right now, the state is not funding pub ed. They're just not. They're withholding money. Some of what they're doing with the money they're withholding is funding programs such as this. And so the only way we're going to get this money back for our teachers is to play the state's game. I would love to say that we've got our own local process for how we want to do this and that and the other. Couldn't fund it if I tried. And so what we're doing is saying, but the state can fund it, so we'll follow the state's rules and get as much of that money as we possibly can. And then bend the curve as much as we can as we are able to glean additional resources.
Yeah. Anything we can do to help make sure that performance keeps those really great teachers around.
Yeah.
We should be looking at. So this is great. I love it.
Well, what's worth noting, and you heard the commissioner talk about trying to keep our best teachers in the classroom, and your only path for salary increase is not
get out of the
becoming an
classroom.
administrator,
Right.
right? We're gonna have some teachers who by the time you take, and these are just round numbers, okay, I'm making these up, but the 12,000 in TIA plus the 55 or so we're paying them, they're at administrator pay. And they'll be there for 5 years, because we'll continue to give step increases and whatever. And so it will be achieving that goal. We'll have teachers who we may want to do other things for us. We'll say, no, I'm having fun in the classroom. And we'll have the teachers making the most money at our campuses that have the poorest kids, which is also part of the method of the madness. And so it's doing what it's intending to do.
Absolutely.
Very good. Good answer.
Any other comments? I just wanted to say what Chris said. I'm sure everybody else was thinking the same thing as you did your very good report, was how much time and energy it took you alone to do all this besides all the other jobs you have. So thank you very, very much for putting together such a robust program.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yes. Okay, next we have
And we
the,
didn't stump her.
no, we didn't, never.
Good.
Intruder detection audit report findings at Midway Middle School. Jeff?
Good evening. Back in 2002, in the summer of 2002, the governor and through safety research, decided that TA would start doing audits on all of our buildings, statewide, all the schools, and they put that on the service centers to take care of these audits. In September, 2 of our campuses received these audits, and the way that they go about, pardon me, the way that they report these audits is there's 2 different categories. You have a finding, which would be a TEA requirement that they put on the schools to abide by, and flags, which would be local district requirements. During our audits, the auditor that came to our campuses did find 1 finding that was a TEA requirement and a flag of local requirements. The audits were conducted at 2 of our different schools. All during one of the schools, in both of the campuses that they examined, all of the exterior doors were inspected, and the auditor was not able to make entry into any of the buildings. All of our exterior doors were locked and secured the entire time. They did have 1 finding at Midway Middle School, where after the auditor examined the campus, he spoke with an administrator, and the administrators were not able to provide the documentation of previous audits on the buildings. That was the only state finding that they were able to find. The audits were still done, but they were not able to provide the up-to-date record keeping. Additional requirements of the flag, although it wasn't a requirement, Midway does go above and beyond what TEA requires to ensure the safety of our kids, and we have the local requirement of the teachers must close all of their doors and have those doors locked at the entire time that school is in session and students are occupying the room. They did find that at one of our campuses, 3 interior doors were not locked, and since then those issues have been addressed, and retraining has corrected that error. Corrective action on the finding at the state level was immediate retraining on all staff members that are responsible for doing the door audits on that campus. Also, we will be submitting documentation to the School Safety Center on showing that we have taken the necessary steps and had proper audits in the weeks following the initial audit. All of our AP staff across the entire district, including Midway Middle School, was trained on how to do the audits and how to document their audits on August 3rd of this year. And on October 2nd, 12th of this year, October 12th, we did a retraining with the staff at Midway Middle School. After the retraining, we spoke to the Safety and Security Committee about the audit findings and presented this same findings to them. And then also tonight, or the agenda from tonight will be submitted to the Safety Center. That is all of it in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
So Jeff, just to be clear, at the middle school, they were doing all their checks weekly. They had put it into their system, but when the man came, the auditor, they could not pull it up. And that's the only reason we had the flag. They're doing the work, it just couldn't be retrieved. And you now have a way to make sure that doesn't happen again, is that correct?
I do, yes. We have centralized our reporting center, or our reporting process, and it is now myself and Dr. Pena are kind of in control of what the reporting is going to look like from moving forward, and it kind of trickles down from there. It's all a standardized form and standardized response system that everything looks uniform across the entire board, so that should we get into this situation again where at the campus level they're not able to find the documentation or for whatever reason cannot pull it up, they can contact myself or Dr. Pena and have it within a couple of minutes.
Okay, great. Now, just let me remind everybody, if you have any questions for him, that you're in a public setting. If there's something that requires more depth, we can go into a closed session. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Allen?
Is it a more depth question to ask? The interior doors, was that at Midway Middle as well, or was that at a different campus? Or is it not a?
It was at Midway Middle, yes.
Anybody else have any further questions or comments?
I can't think of anything to ask Jeff that I think will stump him, so
Yeah.
may as well not bother.
Hey, I
All right.
appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
much.
Yes. Okay, next, the McLennan Central Appraisal District Construction and Renovation of an addition to the appraisal office. We have Jim Halbert, Deputy Chief Appraiser, here to speak to us about it.
Yes, so thank you for having us, or having me. Just to give a brief background on our building, we purchased it in 2009. It was originally built as a call center for a student loan company. It was not designed to handle traffic like we have. It was a lot better than what we originally had, but at this point, it's kind of, it's definitely got some deficiencies. We've seen our number of hearings increase about 3 times over since we originally moved into the building. Some of the complaints we get always seem to center around long wait times for hearings and also not really have an adequate waiting area. Our waiting area that was original to the building only has 16 chairs in it, which is definitely not sufficient. Over the years, we've redone things in the building the best we can. Right now, we have a secondary waiting area that holds about 30 people. But again, some of the complaints are people think once we call them back to that secondary area, they're going to their hearing, but they're not. They're just going to another place to wait.
Sounds like going to the doctor.
Yes, so it makes an already unpleasant experience even worse. Another issue that we have is our parking lot. Again, it was not designed for customer flow, so there's no way to drive around our building. So we have an entrance on one side of the building and an exit on the other. So if you come in, you're either going across the front or you're going straight down one side that only goes about halfway back, and then you have to figure out how to make a U-turn, or you're driving off into the grass. And then the third issue is we only have a single service window for when taxpayers come in. So again, that creates wait times for people just because we can only get through them one at a time. After considering all of the options, which included tearing down our building and building a new building further back on our property, purchasing another building, and then remodeling it, or doing something just to our existing building. Our first thought was just to remodel our existing building because we don't necessarily need more space. We have plenty of space, it's just not configured right. But what we would have to move would be our elevator and all of our bathrooms. So the cost went way up. So in talking with the architect, the best solution we've found is to make a small addition on the back. That will allow us to have a proper customer service counter, similar to the tax office, where multiple people can be serviced at one time. We would also be able to have a larger waiting area for our hearings and construct 2 additional hearing rooms. Right now, we're at 5, so that would take us up to 7. In 2023, we heard a little over 6,000 hearings in our building, all within 45 days. So we don't get more time to do it. We still have 45 days. But every year, more and more people protest. And also, we would go ahead and complete the parking lot around and add about 60 more parking places. In doing this, how we're looking to finance it is we have enough money in reserves to pay off the existing note on our property. And then we would finance the loan for the construction to be an amount no more than we're currently paying in our loan payment. So that way there would not be an increased cost to the entities, which ultimately would be no additional cost to the taxpayers for this construction. So our resolution that we're requesting is for you to approve us to spend up to $2 million to complete this. Anybody have any questions?
So the way you said that, you guys would spend the money, but there would be no additional charge back to us more than we're already paying, correct?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
That's the way to sell something right there.
We're basically asking for permission to do it.
Clearly, you need more space, but to expedite the additional hearings that you have and the additional customer service windows, are you proposing adding extra staff? It's great to have more room, but if you don't have people to service them.
No, we have staff even for customer service, but they are in cubicles towards the back. So they rotate one person a week that works the front counter. That person sits up front all week, and then the next week a different person is up there. So they handle most of the walk-in traffic, and the people in the back would handle most of the call-in.
And with also with the more space for additional hearings, you have the manpower to serve the people that come in. You just need more places to put them.
Correct.
Am I hearing you correctly? Okay.
Correct. We have the staff to handle the hearings. We would have to We would have to get more ARB members, which is, but on that end, but staff-wise, we would be fine.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'm guessing you guys are well positioned to determine how this addition would increase the value of the property? Sorry, that's a bad joke, I know, I shouldn't have said it.
Yes, we would.
I mean, another solution along those lines, I mean, if you just didn't raise everybody's appraisal so much, they wouldn't come see you, and you wouldn't even do the addition. So,
That's true too, but then the state comes knocking on our door.
I was gonna say, there's this thing called confidence interval, and if we've never been out of it, boy, oh boy, it's not as much fun as it sounds
School
like,
districts
so.
would not like that either.
People blame the CAD for property value increases, and what they ought to be doing is talking to the state comptroller. That's the dirty little secret that you and I know that not everyone.
We had
Very aware.
just over 19,000 properties protested this year, which every year is a record from the prior year, but they're seeing that all over the state, so it's not unique to us, but
Well, the county's growing.
the county's growing.
state's growing.
And I'll say this, Jim may not say this, but, Joe Don Bobbitt, who's the chief appraiser, he sends out, customer service surveys after the fact. And despite the fact that people are going through what is considered a not so pleasant experience when you're protesting your property taxes, the results of their customer service surveys are staggeringly good.
On SurveyMonkey, we're at about a 4.4 out of 5 stars. And on Google, I think we're around 4. We don't have as many reviews on Google, but still, most CADs can't say that.
I just want to remind the board, we vote on this tonight in the consent agenda. So if you have any questions or further discussion, you can pull it when we get to that point. But this is a good time to ask him if you have any questions. I think it's clear we're just going to approve y'all spending up to $2 million to do the renovation of your choice. Correct.
Yes. Yes, you're not approving a specific plan, it's just allowing us to add on and remodel the building.
Right, to get the funding for that.
Correct.
We know a little bit about remodeling existing space.
Does anybody have any more questions?
Yeah, just
Yes.
from a procedural standpoint, is this, you need approval of all the taxing entities, or how does that, what does it look like?
We have to get approval from 75% of the voting entities.
Of the voting, okay.
We have 42 voting entities, so we have to get approval from 32.
Wow. And they're
So-
not weighted based on.
How much?
Not based on value?
Everybody is
Not
has
like
an
it is
equal
for
vote.
the election of the.
Yeah.
So you got to make this presentation 32 times?
Or unless, unfortunately, if we get 11 or 12, I think it's 12 no's, then
Next
can we
year you'll
stop?
do it?
But yes,
Stop, oh, yeah.
our intent would be to go to every entity. I mean, I think everybody deserves us coming, if we're requesting money.
Yeah. Have you been to others yet? Are we the first ones to vote?
This is our second day. We
Second,
started
okay.
last night. This is our third one for today. Joe was at another ISD tonight, so.
Was that City of Woodway last night?
No, City of Woodway will be next week.
Okay, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
If you and Dr. Allen get tired of talking election stuff, you could just swap roles for a night.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for him?
Not
Clarify.
specifically about this, and I would say kind of a placeholder thought. We talked a little bit last meeting about some of the legislation that came down and how that was going to get applied with additional members on the board. And there was some catch with how
Well,
that was going to be allotted.
They
Majority
staggered
of
it to where it's gonna be a staggered election cycle, and so, to our knowledge, because I asked the same question at the last board meeting, which was, what, a couple of weeks ago, whatever that was? I mean, it sounds like they didn't put a provision in for that, so despite the fact that we have the fourth most votes, at most, there will be 2 people elected every cycle, so we may end up not having enough votes to.
So the largest entity is going to completely control the board now. Is that what you're saying?
That's what it looks like. According to, because that's what Robert said at the last meeting, wasn't it?
Yes.
So, yep.
Okay,
It
That's
was a
brilliant.
last-minute thing
That is-
during the special session.
Yeah.
that is brilliant.
Talk about unintended consequences.
Magic statistical land again, Becky?
Okay, nothing else for Jim?
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you for coming,
Thank you.
for your time tonight. Wesley, monthly finance report, please.
Best for last.
All right, good evening, members of the board. This month's report is for the month ending September 30th, 2023, the first month of the new fiscal year 2024. A couple things to note. On the first page there, you'll see the first column there on the left-hand side, the budget, general fund budget that was adopted by the board in August, a deficit of $1.7 million. This does include a 10-month fiscal year. As we've talked about before, we're changing our fiscal year starting next year to July the 1st. So these are just for 10 months. Although most of our expenditures are salaries, and the majority of those are earned from September really through May. So it's not a huge reduction in our total budget, but there are some utilities, for instance, only 10 months budgeted of those. So it did kind of trim our budget down a little bit. Also, this does assume passage of the VATRE election, the 3-cent increase in our M&O rate. Page 2 is a breakdown of our general fund revenues. And so the first line, property taxes, and then the first line under the state revenue, the per capita foundation. Those numbers we always try to look at together because that determines our tier 1, the bulk of our M&O funding. As our property taxes go up, our state funding goes down. You will notice this year our state funding of $18.3 million budgeted is a lot more than last year, 7.5, and that is because of the property tax compression, the 18.5 cents that the state mandate. Our tax rates go down, so our property tax revenue goes down, and that hole is filled by state funding. It's revenue neutral for us, but it just changes the complexion of our revenue structure. It's also why on that first line, property taxes budget of $59.2 million is less than last year's first line of $61.6 million, and that's why that strange ballot language we see on the VATRE election, even though this does assume passage of the M&O increase of 3 cents, it still is a decrease overall of our M&O tax revenue from last year.
Wesley?
Yes.
So to that point, well, I'm trying to press the button here. So to that point, on that line where it says per capita and foundation at 18,298, the 18 million from state, that assumes passage of the VATRE.
Yes.
And so if it doesn't pass, that number is going to drop by 5.5 million.
3.75.
Well, drop by 3.75. That's right.
No, the 3.75 is actually a mixture of local taxes and state.
It's a little bit of both. Okay.
Some that will keep.
Okay.
We do have some enrollment data. We don't have our snapshot data available yet, but as of the 1st of October, you can see our enrollment there of 8,836. We've had first 6 weeks ADA data, but not enough to really start projecting for the year. So I'll start populating that probably after we get our second 6 weeks ADA numbers. We also have 2 budget amendments in the consent agenda, 24-4 to provide funds for school guardian training and supplies, and also for an increase in our contracted school resource officer budget. Budget Amendment 24-5 is to provide funds, as Dr. Otojima went over earlier, for the designation fees for the teacher incentive allotment. Any questions on the financial report?
Any questions for Wesley? He keeps plugging along, doing the best he can. Okay.
Keep selling cookies.
No cookies. Okay, stay where you are. Next agenda item is public hearing on financial integrity rating system of Texas for Midway Independent School District. Does he do that for I hit the gavel first? Then I do the gavel. Okay.
Okay, so this is the 21st year of the school's first report, a financial accountability system for Texas school districts developed by TEA. The primary goal is to achieve quality performance in the management of school districts' financial resources. The rating is based on staff, student, and budget data submitted through the PEAM system, as well as the annual financial audit report. We're required to hold a public hearing to discuss the system. First ratings for Midway for 2023 are attached. Now, the 2023 ratings are for the 21-22 fiscal year. We did receive a superior rating, as we have for the last several years. Superior is earned from a score of 90 to 100. We received a 96 out of 100 for the 2022 fiscal year. Any questions?
Okay.
It looks like one of the only changes was the administrative cost ratio. We're just
Yes.
over .10? I mean, we're right on the
Yes.
line. Okay.
So there were two measures that we didn't receive the full 10 points. Our long-term liabilities is a percentage of our total assets, and that was the same one we lost points on last year. A lot of that has to do with the timing of when we issue debt. You know,
Right.
if we waited a while to issue debt, then the first couple years after we issue debt, we'll have more long-term liabilities until we pay it down. And yes, sir, and as you mentioned, the other one is administrative cost ratio. Last year was .0947, say last year, fiscal year '21. Fiscal year '22, it creeped up to .1028, so anything less than 1 was 10 points. Now that we're over, we got 8 points. And that's our administration. So when we adopt our budget by function, function 41 is administration, function 21 is also kind of leadership, so administration roles. And so 41 and 21 divided by our total budget is how they come up with the administrative cost
Is
ratio.
that central as well as campus admin, or is that central?
It's central, and no, 23 is campus admin.
Okay, right.
21 is some others like special ed, some curriculum instruction.
Anybody else have any questions for Wesley? No? Okay. So at this time, the state law requires a public hearing to be held to allow the public an opportunity to speak to the board regarding the first rating. Wesley stated that Midway received a superior rating for 2023 under the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. The primary goal of FIRST is to achieve quality performance in the management of school districts' financial resources. The district has received a superior rating. I will now open the public hearing at 8:37. Does anyone in the public like to speak to this subject? Hearing no one wanting to speak to the subject, I will close the public hearing at 8:38. We'll be generous. All right, thank you, Wesley.
Thank you to Wesley and his staff for continuing to keep us in such good shape. A superior rating.
Yes.
We kind of gloss by it, but it's really great work by their
You're right.
department.
Thank you. Okay, next item is the consent agenda. I will read all the consent agenda items, and if anyone wants to pull an item, please let me know. Minutes of the September 19th, 2023 regularly scheduled board meeting. 23-24 district and campus improvement plans, which include district improvement plan, Midway High School campus improvement plan, Midway Middle School campus improvement plan, River Valley Middle School campus improvement plan, Castleman Creek Elementary School improvement plan, Chapel Park Elementary School campus improvement plan, Hewitt Elementary School campus improvement plan, Park Hill Elementary School campus improvement plan, South Bosque Elementary School campus improvement plan, Speegleville Elementary School campus improvement plan, Spring Valley Elementary School campus improvement plan, Woodway Elementary School campus improvement plan. 3, the MHS choir out-of-state trip. 4, early graduation request. 5, budget amendments. 6, resolution to establish non-business days for Public Information Act. 7, approve renovation and construction of McLennan Central Appraisal District Office. B, no, A is just consent agenda, correct? Yeah, that's it. So that is the consent agenda. Would any board member like to pull an item?
I'd like to pull 2A, the overall district improvement plan.
Okay, Ms. Watts has requested that we pull number 2, 2023 to 2024 district and campus improvement plan.
But just
With-
A, not all the rest.
Just the A, excuse me. Campus plans, number A, district improvement plan. With that said, we will vote on the remaining of the consent agenda items, which will be 1, number 2, B through L, number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Watts.
Second.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So moved by Ms. Watts, seconded by Mr. Tullis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the consent agenda as presented passes. Now, Pam, please talk to us about your item.
I'm just kind of a detail nerd, so I had a couple of questions. It says on the comprehensive needs assessment under the demographic survey that the let's see, ethnicity, at-risk populations, and special populations have all remained steady over the last 5 years. I was under the impression that our special populations have kind of spiked in the last several years. So is that steady within that population, or steady compared to to the general population?
I would say that we have had steady growth within Midway ISD consistently over the last 5 years. It's
So-
definitely growth.
Right, but it's not higher than the average growth rate overall?
Well, we're sticking at about 12 and 14% every school year. So as our overall population increases, our sped population, our section 504 population, and our dyslexia population, they're all growing as well.
Okay, and then, because my writer editing brain can be a little ruthless, at the top of page 8, yeah.
I saw that too.
We're listed as having 10 traditional campuses, we're up to 11 now, so. I'm a word nerd, so.
I'm so glad you did that, because I saw that too and thought, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm glad you did.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on what Pam has pulled? Okay, with that said, do you have a motion to accept line item 8A, 2A, 2023-24 District and Campus Improvement Plans for the District Improvement Plan?
So moved.
So moved by Jonathan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Pam. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, it passes. We accept the consent agenda to A to A. I'm not going to say all that again. Okay. Next item on the agenda is to approve the agreement for purchase of attendance credits. Dr. Chris, do you want to talk to that, about
Yeah,
that?
I'll key it up, and Wesley's going to jump in here.
Okay.
But we're technically a revenue contributing district. However, we don't actually contribute any revenue because the relationship between our property value growth and our enrollment still has us right under the threshold where we would have to pay into recapture. However, because we are technically a Chapter 49 district, we still have to do the agreement for how we would purchase attendance credits so that should we tip over, we already have the mechanism in place by which we would pay our Robin Hood bill. That's very non-technical language.
Okay.
You want to add anything to that, Wesley?
And if we had, so we talked about gold, copper pennies, we're going with green work, gold. If we
Right.
had any copper pennies, we would pay our capture.
That's true.
on those. So that's why we have to, we're checking.
Yeah. We don't have any copper pennies, so we're not going to pay in, but the state still has us do this.
Right, so this is just a step we need to go through.
It's just a check into the box,
And it
right,
can
Wesley?
change. Like, remember last year, there was a couple months where TA's data had us paying
Yeah.
tier 1 for capture, so, you know, it's kind of a moving target depending on our audit.
Okay.
So is that something that if our enrollment goes up, we were less likely to pay recapture? if
Our enrollment went down, because it's our values.
Per
divided
student.
by-
Divided by enroll, okay.
What you said's correct. If our
Right.
enrollment went up, but our
We're
values
less likely.
stayed flat, we would be less likely to pay into
To pay the
recapture.
recapture, got it.
the case.
But if you flip that, if our enrollment started to decline and our values kept going up, then the likelihood that we'd pay into recapture would increase.
Got it.
Okay. Everybody clear on that? Any questions? Clear as mud?
Yeah.
Okay, I need someone to make a motion to approve the agreement for purchase of attendance credits.
So
Or
moved.
Do I have a motion?
Mr.
Excuse
Tellis.
me. A motion was made by Rick, and I need a second for that, please.
Second.
Second was made by Colin. To adopt the following language for the 2023-24 school year, we delegate contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code, TEC 11.1511C4 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under TEC 48.257 and TEC Chapter 49, subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under TEC 49.006. This includes approval of the agreement for the purchase of attendant credit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The vote passes. We have approved that. Superintendent Communications.
So I always have to sort of think about what I want to share in these moments, and I want to tell you a couple things.
Oh, I forgot personnel. Sorry. Do you want me to go
We'll
back?
get to it in a minute.
Okay.
It's fine.
All
Our tennis team won at, what was it, Allison? Regional district area? By district? Okay. 10-0.
Woo.
Our marching band got straight ones and will be at Kelly Reeves Stadium on Saturday. I don't know the exact time yet because we're waiting on some final, we've been waiting some other contests to wrap up. We drew fourth spot, so we expect it to be relatively early in the day. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,300 kids at the homecoming dance.
Wow.
And I didn't get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I'm assuming it all went pretty well. We had a lively and engaged student section at our homecoming game. We won district in boys cross country and second in girls, third in girls. Yeah, I'm trying to pull all this out of my head. So they're advancing. There's a lot of attention that gets focused on different things throughout the course of a school year. But y'all, by almost any measure, you can look at any program. We locked up a playoff spot in football last Friday at the homecoming game. It's the
Oh, we
first time we've
did?
been in playoffs in a little while.
Awesome, yeah.
So, and on top of all that, we continue to churn away academically, and we continue to try and work on all the things that we work on to make our schools exciting, vibrant environments for our students. There's a lot of things we talk about at these meetings, and I think it's important that we just try and remind ourselves of the vast array of things that our students are involved in. I was at a GT meet and greet last night. I was at a special ed meet and greet. When was that, Lisa?
It was at the beginning of October.
Yeah, so it's been a little while. And it is just churning, and it always does, and it never stops. And it's just a testament to our staff. Like, that's the big takeaway I'm hoping you get from all this, is it's just a testament to our staff. Everyone is just working so hard. It's a testament to our parents and our community that we have so many kids so active and engaged. I think my final comment will be this. It is National Bully Prevention Awareness Month, and we do a number of different things to try and make sure our schools are safe spaces for students. We have 8,800, and Wesley told us 36 kids. And on any given day of the week, there's a couple of them who are going to be a rascal. It's unacceptable, but it is the reality. But I'm constantly reminded of the fact that almost all behaviors are taught, either explicitly or by example. And I can tell you one of the most important things we can do to create bully-free schools is to make sure that the adults are working to create bully-free environments in the world outside of school. And that includes digital spaces, I might add. And I just think it's really important that everyone hold themselves and their neighbors accountable for the way in which they talk about each other and the way in which they talk about the important business that is taking place both locally, across the state, and in our nation. It is really hard to tell kids that it's not nice to do certain things when a whole lot of what they see going on television by people who wear suits and ties is the exact opposite behaviors we're expecting of them. And it just trickles down. And so I think it's super important that we try and stay on narrative where that's concerned. So I call on all of us to try and be the better version of ourselves every day. All right, I'm done.
Just wanted to note, we had an outstanding homecoming court. And as I understand that the young lady who won, yes, it is a student that's involved kind of across the school and is well known to lots of different student groups and just is known for being very kind everywhere she goes. And that's not the first time I've seen this, that I love that year after year after year, our student body singles out and recognizes students who are nice to each other. And I just think that's testimony to what's going on, so.
Yeah, I think you both said it very well, that we are just populated with an awesome student body everywhere and awesome staff, and everybody seems to try to make the best and be the best version of themselves they can be, as much as they can be. So thank you. Item C, consideration of personnel. 1, do we have anything, Chris, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, rights and duties, is this one disposable? Or 2, hear, complain, or charge against an officer?
We have no action before the board related to personnel, however,
Okay.
we do need to go into closed session.
I thought you might say that. We need to go in closed session. Okay. Excuse me. I'm going to announce that we are going to go into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 to discuss personnel at 8:50.